We're live.
Good morning. Welcome to the 10:30 a.m. Urban and Economic Development Committee. I'm chairing in place of Councilor Bellis. Councilor Bellis had her baby last week on Thursday, for those interested, on June 19th. Baby Ezra Stargard, I hope I pronounced this right, Stargarder, is that right?
It's Liberty.
Huh?
It's Liberty Bellis.
Liberty Bellis, that's
Yeah,
right.
also known as.
7 pounds and 1 ounce, so congratulations to our colleague. Hope she's doing well, and I'm sure she's watching. So, item number 1, I call this meeting to order. Item number 2, before I get to Mr. Tisdale, just a sequencing of events here. We're going to move item agenda 8 after Mr. Tisdale.
Oh, wow.
So, I think our Public Safety Commissioner has somewhere to be pretty quick, so. All right, so, item number 2, William Tisdale, appointment to the TMUA, replacing Stephanie Vickers-Regan, term expires April 8th, 2026, from District 9. Are you sure you're from District 9?
I may be, but I've
You
probably
may-
lived in every district around
All
here.
right, do you claim the guy next to you?
Sometimes, you know, he's hard to claim. No,
Well, welcome to the table.
Thank you,
And-
yeah.
and tell us why you want to serve. Tell us, because those of us who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to serve on this specific commission.
Okay, well, William Tisdale, grew up here, graduated from Booker T. Washington, went to probably the greatest college in the nation, OU. I know that the council lady, Harper, she's very proud of that moment there. After graduating, I came back here and worked for the Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce. This is when we would call it the Metropolitan Chamber, when Mickey Thompson and that group was there. Started doing development consulting about 30 years ago. Traveled around all the United States. They always say you're an expert when you drive 90 miles away from home. So, you know, locally I'm not an expert, but when I get past Okmulgee, I become an expert. But then we've done owner's rep for the last 25 years, and now we do development as well. So I'm excited about serving on the board. I heard the pay is great, so you know that's the main reason. You know, love my city. Been here for 60 years. I know I don't look that old. Hopefully everybody agree with that. Oh, okay.
Some of us age better than others.
Yeah. But overall, seriously, I really feel honored to serve in this capacity and share what little knowledge I've know a few of the meetings I've met with Mr. Reynolds and got a little bit of update, met with Eric, and I do want to confess that the tap water in Tulsa is the best. I've tried them all.
Well, obviously with your name, you're well known, so thank you for being willing to serve the citizens of Tulsa. So obviously I'm honored for you to be here. Counselors, any questions or comments for Mr. Tisdale?
Thank you for your willingness to serve.
Yeah, thank you for your
All right,
service.
thank you very much, sir. Your confirmation will be on our July 16th, 5 p.m. city council meeting. You can either attend or not attend, at your pleasure.
I think I'll be there. I think you guys will be taking action on another zoning deal that I have on that same day.
I didn't see
yeah,
that.
So
I
I'll
did
be
see
present, so.
All right,
Thank you so
sir.
much.
We appreciate you
Thank
being
you.
here.
Good seeing you, man.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you. Yep, you too.
All right, item number 8, ordinance amending Tulsa revised ordinances, Title 27, titled Penal Code, Chapter 28, titled Curfew Hours for Juveniles, adding downtown curfew hours applicable in the Central Business District from June 26, 2025 to midnight, March 31st, 2026, providing for severability, appealing conflicting ordinances. This is brought by Councilors Hall, Harper, Bellis, Gilbert, and Lakin. This comes with the emergency clause, request to waiver city charter council rules, and requesting adoption on first reading. We have some visitors from TPD and, of course, our public safety commissioner. Good morning.
Mr. Chair, without objection, can I ask Brian Kurtz with Downtown
Tulsa
partners,
Partnership?
yeah,
Yeah.
come to the table
Right.
as well. He's been a part of this group.
Counselors.
So if you don't mind, can I give a little background of
whichever one of
what's
you-
been going on?
Yeah, whichever one of you
And
sponsors.
Counselor Hall Harper, if you want to,
Yeah, we don't have anything about it from youth services here. They were part of this.
I don't see. So we have been meeting, myself, Counselor Hall Harper and Counselor Bellis, along with representatives from the Tulsa Police Department, Mr. Kurtz, and Youth Services of Tulsa. We've started meeting a couple months ago, from a meeting that we had that some of us went to with business owners within the Blue Dome district. And it was pretty cool. We had a meeting at Arnie's, but we didn't drink, so. And the reason that the business owners called that meeting, it was right after the Blue Dome shooting that happened. And so all of this came about from listening to the business owners at that meeting for the police department to do something about the curfew. So we have been meeting off and on for several weeks. We chose to fast forward this only because of the violence downtown is not, it's not stopping. I mean, it's continuous. And if there's something that we can do to help resolve the violence, I do believe this is the first step. This isn't all. This is going to be a continuing discussion of what we do to bring crime down, and what we can do otherwise to help our youth in the city to get away from that type of activity. So I just wanted everybody to know that these discussions started before the Juneteenth incident. So this has been ongoing for a good couple of months. So, Counselor Hall Harper, I don't know if there's anything that you want to
Yeah, I
add.
agree, and I'll say it is just the first step. It's not the end-all solution at all. I do feel like we need to do something. And I said it in the subcommittee, and I'll say it here publicly. I am concerned because there's going to, in implementing this, any ordinance, the curfew ordinance as it stands right now before any changes, a lot of officer discretion is involved in implementing or enforcing the ordinance, and that's a concern for me. It is a huge concern for me because I know what the data shows, and I know that in that discretion, some children are youth going to be treated differently than others. It even was talked about in the meeting, and so I'm concerned equally on both. Yes, we have to do something, and this is a first step, but there are other things that brings me major concern on here. One of the things comments that was made in that is that every interaction will be on body cam. And so I definitely will be pushing, if there's complaints, I definitely will be pushing for, we want to see that body cam in its entirety to determine and make sure that everybody is being treated equally. And that is a major concern for me. But other than that, I do think, what we've been told anyway, is that Oklahoma City implemented a similar policy and that it has had positive effects there in their entertainment district there. And so hopefully this will work so that we will stop having these youth congregating for long periods of time, because that's when things tend to explode.
Right.
And can lead to, unfortunately, to death. And so, again, as elected officials, we need to do something, but this is just a first step.
Right. It is a first step, and I know that I've spoken to several of you worried about, is this going to push the crime out into the other districts?
I said that as
And
well.
again, this is just a first step. This is going to be a continued discussion to look at our curfew ordinance as a whole. So to see what we can do to, if the crime if it pushes it out into other areas, what can we do to solve that? So again, this is just the beginning, this isn't the end all right here. So,
Well, we already have some of that. Everything is not.
Right,
All of these incidents
exactly.
are not taking place
Crybaby
in
Hill,
downtown.
right.
There are other situations where,
Yep.
where this is happening, so it's
Yep.
going to, the concern, and as I said, it's going to push it out even more, since they know they won't be able to congregate in Loader downtown, so we have to be ready to address that.
so if we could have if anyone has any questions for Major, what did I just call you that?
So- Can we
Deputy
just
Chief
explain that?
Walmerhouse,
Just say Major Chief.
Major Chief.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe Jack should just kind of talk about the differences first. and
Okay,
then
that's
go
good.
into
Yep.
implementation.
Okay, the differences are pretty straightforward, actually. We add a definition of central business district, and we just took that straight from the sign code, licensing signs in the rights-of-way downtown, so it's pretty straightforward. It's the IDL. And we add a definition for downtown curfew hours, which is just 9 PM every day of the week. Pretty straightforward. We do some cleanup in here of, defining public places to include sidewalks, curbs, parks, playgrounds, just making sure that there's clarity around what that means. And then we break out the offenses into citywide curfew hours that's applicable across the city, and then downtown curfew hours applicable only in the central business district. There's one difference in those. One is that downtown, it is not an offense for a juvenile to be in an establishment. So if in a restaurant, in a business, after 9 PM is not in itself an offense. But it is an offense to be in any public place or in a privately owned parking area. So kind of loitering, congregating in parking lots or on the street. And then the other provisions are similar, except one specific to private parking area. And then the rest is cleanup. State statute's been updated since this was first implemented in the 90s. We changed those references to refer to current state statutes, and that's really it.
Counselor Lakin, do you have anything to add?
No, I just think it's really important for you all to hear from TPD and from the commissioner, the things we heard in a meeting that we had on Monday with them, just because we're not doing this in isolation of what the police department is asking us for. They're the ones out there trying to enforce the law and keep the laws and keep these things from happening. And so I think they have a very interesting perspective, not just on what's going on in downtown, but how they're preventing crime in these age groups from happening all across our city and our districts as well. So I look forward to hearing from them too. And maybe we could turn it over to
Yeah.
the commissioner.
Can I ask a procedural question?
Yeah, go ahead.
First and foremost, if we're talking about this is just a first step, why is it emergency clause?
Because we're experiencing an emergency.
Okay.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Commissioner.
hi, Commissioner Laurel Roberts, the mayor's office. Thanks for having us here today. I will talk a little bit about what we talked about in small committee. I want to address Counselor Hall Harper's concern. She talked about fair treatment of this. And I can assure you from the mayor's office and from my position that we will ensure that there is accountability and transparency with application of this. And because we know that community trust is imperative. Through these violence initiatives, we're really trying to build that relationship. We depend on them. And so from the mayor's office, from my position, I will work with Deputy Chief Walmerhouse or Chief Larson to address any concerns that come up and to ensure that there is accountability on application of the movement on this. So I wanted to say that. And then just a little bit about what we talked about. Getting pushed through as an emergency clause, but yet the continued talks, right? Policy is not it's an ongoing discussion, it's ongoing tactics, it's evaluation of what's working, not working, analyzing the data. As Councilor Gilbert said in May, right after the Blue Dome shooting, Brian was helpful enough to get the establishment owners, the business owners, stakeholders together. We had a meeting. We heard their concerns about youth loitering in parking lots, lack of security in parking lots, really no supervision They're not patrons to any of the bars because they're underage, so they're not down there for a legitimate purpose other than to congregate. We knew that there was probably alcohol in the cars. PD can talk about the guns that are being housed in the cars. It was brought up, can we change the curfew? Counselor Gilbert worked on that. Brian brought us what Oklahoma City has had success with, and that's how the talks about 9 o'clock curfew downtown kind of started, and then just really grew momentum to where we are today. So a couple of the key things is, we've heard why 9 o'clock, how much curfew has it been enforced, is there any data to support enforcing the curfew? Well, unfortunately, a 12 o'clock curfew, and I can let Deputy Chief Wilmerhauser talk about that a little more, but it was difficult to enforce because of the number of crowds that were downtown at 12 o'clock. There's a pivot to the enforcement that goes on when the bar patrons are down there, the folks that are down there enjoying the entertainment venues. It made it difficult to deal with the youth. So by employing a 9 o'clock curfew downtown, it allows them to address the crowds, disperse them, which was a huge challenge, and I think watching some of the social media, we could probably all attest to the crowds down there. Allows them to disperse it before it really gets to a point of being out of control, or they have to start dealing with other issues that are more, bar related, or and so, like I said, he can talk about that a little bit more, but there's also an obligation to protect our youth. We know in May 4th, one of our shooters was 17 years old. It's well after curfew, and so there is an attempt to protect that youth, that younger population from being subject to drunken crowds, disturbances, and just dispersing them and keeping them away from that. So those are a couple of the points I know we talked about in small budget small committee. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I think I'll defer to Deputy Chief Wilmerhauser with a little bit more.
Yeah, thank you. So Commissioner Roberts, Mark Wilmerhauser, Deputy Chief for TPD. I also brought with me Captain Michelle Armentrout, who's actually heading up our citywide efforts to address crime. So we do, at a certain point in time, it shifts towards overall crowd management and crowd safety in an environment like that. If you can picture kind of like the parade in Oklahoma City yesterday for the Thunder, minor ordinances were not going to probably be effortfully enforced by all law enforcement down there because they were trying to focus on the safety and security of the entire crowds down there to enjoy that. Same thing with downtown Friday and Saturday nights. And so, as I also discussed in small committee, picture it, so we all know if you're willing to shoot someone 25 feet away from law enforcement, an additional ordinance is not going to scare you away. What we want to do is be able to protect, so if you have 10 juveniles, if we can get 7 of them out of that environment earlier in the day, earlier in the night, now we've definitely protected those 7, and we can focus on the 3 that we're going to have to take more of an enforcement approach with, because they're down there with guns, down there looking to cause problems, and that's where we can put our focus towards. For instance, over the last 3 years, just inside the IDL, we've recovered 125 to 150 guns. TPD, I think last year seized 800 to 900 firearms citywide, and so 125 to 150 just coming out of the IDL is concerning, considering how large the city is. And so again, those are the efforts we're trying to make, is making it a safe environment late at night for everyone to enjoy, and getting youth that have literally nothing to do in that environment but possibly be targeted and victimized out of that environment and somewhere else. And then also to the concern citywide, the reason this is needed specifically now is because of the large crowds. Citywide aspects, we're doing some efforts to, working with Department of City Experience, to try to get some letters sent back out to Airbnb folks. This is the rules, this is how you handle this. But then also pushing some education, and I would welcome your help as well to your constituents, pushing education to your neighborhoods, to the the folks that you represent, these are the rules. We all know the Airbnb houses that are in our neighborhoods. If you start to see increases, please contact TPD. If it's not emergent, I know code enforcement can get involved, but, and then also, again, as this is a little piece, in the background, we're also working with our partners, My Brother's Keeper, Youth Services of Tulsa, Impact Tulsa, all types of community partners who can get in on the front end of this for intervention. I know DeAndre's working with that, April, but yeah, so it's just a piece of a larger tactic, so.
Brian, do you want to give some feedback on?
Happy to. Good morning, everyone. Brian Kurtz, I'm the CEO of Downtown Tulsa Partnership. I appreciate the opportunity to join you all today and for the collaboration over the last certainly 6 weeks that this current proposal in its current format has been discussed. I think it's important for me to be clear that I do not speak on behalf of every business and property owner in downtown as I'm here today. I am certainly representing our board of directors that is made up of businesses and property owners. We try to be diverse in the districts, the types of businesses and properties that are on our board and represented. And I say that acknowledging that there will be people and individuals who feel like this is not the appropriate measure. However, our board, we are resolved that this is the action that needs to take place today, and this is not a knee-jerk reaction to the tragic shooting that took place at Juneteenth. The fight that broke out on Thursday, this has been in discussion at a high level, frankly, for years, and is likely something that should have been implemented sooner than where we are right now. I think to Councilor Dutton's question about the emergency, we're at an emergency point. We're beyond an emergency point. Every single Friday and Saturday in downtown, we have, to the commissioner's remarks earlier, we have hundreds, sometimes maybe thousands of individuals, youth, some under 18 years of age, some between 18 and 21, but individuals who have really no right or reason to be in our busy bar and entertainment establishments. And if we have an opportunity to protect a certain number of youth who are 17 and under from being in that area, given this piloted control opportunity, it's the right decision to do at this point in time. I had the opportunity to chat briefly with Councilor Dexter Wright, Councilor Bengal yesterday, a little bit via email with Councilor Bush this morning about the merits of this, the reasons, the justification. I'm a parent myself. I have three children under 10 years of age. I know nothing about what it is like to parent teenagers other than what I myself was as a teenager and my own interactions with police and getting into some things. I will say, when my children find themselves in dangerous situations, my first reaction is to remove them from that situation. What we are attempting to do on a community basis is remove individuals who are finding themselves in extremely dangerous scenarios with illegal weapons, with contraband, with drug use, and in or near establishments that are around the consumption of alcohol, and a means to protect themselves and the thousands of people who live, work, and visit in downtown each and every single day. This is, I think it would be hard pressed to say that this is the be-all, end-all, cure-all solution for our woes in downtown. This has absolutely no impact on the daytime issues that we experience from a public safety standpoint. However, this is targeted to a very specific need that we have experienced for far too long, and something that does require emergency action today. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you all have about the dialogue that has been established up to this point among the small working group, among our board of directors, and the number of businesses and stakeholders that we have had dialogue with. I will also, to the deputy chief's point, not only have we had conversations with service providers that are focused on youth, just this, in 2 days from now, we have an additional convening, I think our second or third, with Youth Services of Tulsa, My Brother's Keeper, Impact Tulsa, the Mayor's Office of Youth, Children, and Families, talking about the additional ways that we need to focus on youth crime prevention, rather than just looking at it from an enforcement standpoint. This is a citywide problem. It's certainly impacting downtown at a much larger degree than I think it is impacting other areas. But it's not just a downtown problem. This is something that we all need to come together, focus on a solution, adopt this solution today, while we look at longer-term efforts and program solutions that can help mitigate the core reasons of why children and youth are finding themselves wanting to be in harm's way in the face of danger too much.
I also want to add that this also carries the emergency clause, or a sunset clause, so that we can continue these discussions and bring it back to look at, are we making a difference? Do we need to continue this, or do we let it sunset? So,
It forces us back to the table.
right.
And gives you all enough time to measure the progress and success of the ordinance.
Yeah.
Or unsuccess of it.
All right, thank you. I would just add that, obviously, I feel like the entire city has been in an emergent state when it comes to our juveniles. We have junior high schoolers stealing cars and taking our officers on a chase. We have a 17-year-old who was a serial burglar. You know, we have this issue all over the city. So I understand that you're saying it's not a magic bullet to fix that problem. It's focused specifically on this corridor. But I don't want to be the inheritor of an issue. And I want people to understand that this isn't just an issue that occurs down in this corridor. It happens all over the city. So I would suggest that we pull in the sunset date, just for my comfort, so I feel like we're actually putting legitimate eyes on this, not waiting a whole year, that we kind of rein this in 6 months.
So go to what, the
September.
end of the year?
Yeah, closer to the end of the year.
So December 31st?
Kids should be back in school.
Well, we have to use a date where
I'd
we'll
like it to be
actually-
October 1st. That gives 90 days, and I think we should have weekly data updates, because I share your concerns.
Yeah, I'm just,
We just heard, oh, go ahead, finish.
yeah, I just don't want us to feel like that, you know, we fix this problem for this portion of the city, and we're just working, slowly tackling the issue
Right.
throughout the city. Because to me, this isn't just an issue that involves this corridor. I totally grasp that. Juveniles don't have any business being downtown when there's not a specific event that they're at a restaurant. They shouldn't be unaccompanied. The fact that we're losing teenagers to gun violence, or that they're even willing to even carry a gun and use it against another person, is troubling to me to start with. So I want us to
Can I
figure
add
out how to
something to
deal
what you
with
just
that.
said? When you said there's no business for youth to be down there, what I see a lot of is they're going down and they're using the scooters as an entertainment. They're not there to go in the bars or whatever, they're going
I
down there
agree.
just to go up and
They
down
don't
the
have any
hills and
outlet.
do all of that.
They don't have any outlet.
As a fun activity, skateboarding, I mean, that's what
Yeah.
I liken it to. So, I mean, which is, you know, it's not like we have a park where they can go and do those things, but that's part of it,
Okay, so,
why they're down there,
Counselor Dutton, you're first.
which is legal.
Okay, so I have a lot of comments in regards to this, and number one was I was in back-to-back meetings all day yesterday and have not had a chance. I spent 4 hours at a BOA meeting yesterday afternoon, did not get out of there until 5. I have not had a chance to go over the information, and I need more time. I need to be able to parse out the information. I need factual data in front of me. I need comparables regarding the actual activity, criminal activity that is downtown, public intoxication arrests. I would like to see petty crime arrests versus the teen problem that we're talking about. I'm also concerned that there's been no mention of the 5-5 shooting downtown, that it was gang-related. And that we have, Deputy Chief, don't we have a gang task force?
A unit focused on
Yeah.
gangs.
Okay.
Mhm.
So, and I can appreciate that. So to create an emergency issue situation out of a couple of situations that have occurred downtown with one being gang-related. I also am concerned about the, like I said, the lack of data. I'm also bringing to the table some data regarding the Equalities Indicator Report and percentages of the number of brown and black people in Tulsa and how that relates to their treatment by TPD. And this is all based in data. And it looks like if you're going to the Equalities Indicator, I don't know if anybody has that on hand or wants to view it. Comparison of black youth arrests versus white youth arrests. In 2024, it was 25,000 for juvenile arrests by rate, by race, whereas compared to Group B, which is the number of white youths, it was 9414. And I think that we really need to consider that the population of the black community in Tulsa is only 14%. That's huge. And there's been no data presented to me where these kids are coming from. The Hispanic population in Tulsa, I believe, is at about 30%. So we're talking some really low numbers of targeted individuals with this ordinance. I don't think it's been thought out thoroughly. And I definitely don't have the data that I would need to make an informed decision. I also want to reiterate to Councilor Bengel's point, District 3, 6, 7, and 8 do not have community centers. We do not have resources for the youth to utilize. And to expect that we're going to focus all of this downtown, to me, is offensive. And that we aren't addressing the systemic problem. I can appreciate having a business. I can appreciate serving alcohol. I think that's part of the problem. I think that we are not having enough regulation with these business owners downtown regulating their clients. I would like percentages on how many arrests were due to alcohol intoxication downtown by adults. I want the crime stats by adults for the IDL that we're talking about right here. I would like to bring our resilience and equity person to the table to talk about some of these concerns and how it's going to affect our community. I know just in District 3 alone, the population breakdown is, I also have a population, black population of 14.9% and a Hispanic population of 31.4%. I'm concerned that there's no documentation as to these targets, plus who determines, how is the police going to handle if a 19-year-old is on the street walking after curfew and they get asked for their ID and they refuse? What's going to happen to them? What sort of reaction is that going to cause? I don't know that many under 18-year-olds that have IDs,
Counselor,
unless they have a,
can I ask you a question? Are you implying that this is targeted against specific demographics, this curfew?
We already have a
I'm
curfew
con-
law. or
Yeah, I
ordinance.
hope that's not the insinuation.
what I'm trying to do is just bring out statistics.
Okay.
And statistics based on this data in the Equality Indicator Report and census data about the percentage and the concentration of arrests for black and brown people versus white people.
Yeah, I would just be careful about framing this as a target against specific demographic, because I don't think that's
I don't
the
think I
intent
used
of
that
this.
word, target.
No, that's
So,
not.
and I
Yeah, you did.
appreciate that.
You did use target.
Okay, so
I just want to make sure
I
I
appreciate
understand the
that,
clarity.
yeah, I appreciate that. I'm trying to think, because we were not presented with any data in support of this ordinance. I have not had time, and I would like to parse through it, period.
Mr. Chair, can I make a comment? So we already have an ordinance for curfew in the books. It's already there. All we're asking is for this emergency, that we're having this trend of crime, youth crime happening downtown. And this is all that if you want data, we can talk about data, we can talk about it. And we can bring it back for a discussion with that data on a weekly basis. If we need to, we absolutely can.
And I
But
appreciate-
right now, we have an emergency downtown where we have youth getting involved in activities that they shouldn't be involved in.
Oh, that's all over Tulsa. Forgive me.
It
but
is
that
all over Tulsa, and like I
just had
said,
a-
this is not a fix-all.
I
This
agree.
is not
I
a
agree.
fix-all.
I'm just
This is the
confused.
beginning of a long, ongoing discussion.
I'm just
So,
confused about
thank
the
you.
emergency clause and the fact that crime stats are not centered in the IDL, and I appreciate the juvenile interest. On the other hand, I just had a shooting in District 3 in a warehouse with 7 people. I don't hear the outcry from anybody. So, that's my point. I'm finished.
Are you, okay.
Council, real
No
quick,
problem.
I'm sorry, Captain Armstrong has to step out to a meeting, but
Thank you.
need to excuse herself.
Counselor Archie?
Yes. So I have a couple of questions. Maybe one is for Jack. In the ordinance, if you go under section 2805, where you have enforcement, so reasonable has been crossed out to probable cause. I'm not an attorney. Can you just maybe explain what is the difference between, say, reasonable suspicion versus probable cause?
Well, that's just the standard that the court requires for filing a charge or a citation. So that was just clarification of the standard that the police department actually uses and applies in the field and that is presented to the court.
So maybe we can illuminate that standard. Let's say an officer is walking down the street and sees a young person, and by young meaning not looking old looking, but doesn't know what their age is, and says, how old are you, young man? And he says, 19. Are we done? Or like as to what is the, kind of walk me through what the sort of interaction, enforcement, or like just paint me a picture of what this will actually look like in application.
Yeah, I'll tell you what happens now citywide after midnight on Saturday is, yeah, if someone appears or a call is, hey, youth are at the park, right? And we show up and it appears you're young, yeah, you will then, we now have reasonable suspicion to believe that a crime has been, is being, or is about to be committed. And so then we need to confirm or dispel that reasonable suspicion. And an ID being produced could easily do that. There's other ways that could possibly happen as well. And then it's, oh, you're 18? Okay.
So,
Follow his example though, because you switched it to a group of kids in a park.
Oh,
You
no,
said-
individual,
You said a gentleman
sorry.
walking down the street, downtown, I just want to follow to make sure that the application is the same.
The application, that's why I referenced it to the curfew right now. The application is the same.
But you said if we see youth in a park, a group of youth in a park, he said one gentleman
Yeah,
walking
yeah.
down the street.
I'm
You
sorry, I
understand?
was not trying
Yeah.
to do that.
I
I'm
just wanna be clear.
saying, however he described it,
Okay.
that's exactly what's gonna happen, is it's reasonable suspicion to detain, to confirm or dispel, and then either release because it was dispelled, or it was proven, and by probable cause, a citation would be issued, or possibly, since we're talking about juveniles, we're also possibly talking about being transferred to, or transported to the CIC so that they can get dropped off, a parent can come get that, and officers can get back in service faster.
so that gentleman, he says, I don't have an ID because I'm I don't have one, I just walked out with this with my phone. And then maybe through questioning back and forth, you're able to determine or think that he's 16 or 17. And he says, my uncle dropped me off, like, it's gonna be an hour before he gets there, before he picks me up or whatever it is. What do you do with that gentleman?
Yeah, if we do determine he's 16 or 17, there's again, a lot of different things that can be done. It could be, especially right now with a new 9 o'clock curfew, if that's what's gonna be implemented. Anytime a lot of those subtle ordinance changes occur, there's a lot of education on the front end. Officers give a ton of grace in educating people. Hey, remember the ordinance changed. I need you to get out of here. I need you to find a ride. Working with that juvenile to try to find any attempt to do that.
Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, and then again, also, if there is a need to take enforcement and somebody can't get to us for an hour or so, and we don't want officers just hanging out of service for that long, that's again, that transport to CIC to where people can take over that juvenile and contact parents, and we can get out here.
Even if, just sticking with the example, that individual is not causing a disturbance, not causing a problem. Well, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, what I've been hearing is, we have a curfew, it's not being enforced. If you just enforce what was actually happening, then we would be in a different place. Maybe some are saying we don't have the manpower or woman power or police power to do the enforcement. I'm just trying to get my head around how discretion is going to be used practically. I think, and I really appreciate Brian, I don't know where I'm getting so. This downtown belongs to everyone. He said this, you don't have a right or a reason or something like that to be, after a certain amount of time. If you're under 21, yes, you shouldn't be in a bar. But the message that we need to send to these young people is that all of Tulsa is for everyone. All of Tulsa is for everyone. And I'm challenged with this because I know that we have to do something. But the message that we have to send, because what I see Councilor Gilbert is saying is, we have a youth crime wave in Tulsa. I wrote down what she said. But then I'm hearing what you're saying is we actually try to want to protect youth from the crime that's happening. And I'm thinking, well, how many of these crimes have been committed by the youth? The Blue Dome, I think the guy was 21 when he was shooting. I think we talk about young people, maybe it's 25 or under. I'm feeling the tension of trying to protect young people while at the same time not sending the message that you're not welcome, because they should feel welcome, while at the same time policies where we feel safe. Okay, I'm talking a whole bunch.
I just want to say that was brought up in the subcommittee.
Okay, well, that's good. I was going to agree with Councilor Bangle in saying it needs to be far shorter, this time period.
Sunset.
Yeah, the sunset. But then Muhlenberg was saying there needs to be a grace period of like tremendous education. So like it may be 2 or 3 months or something of just. Also, there's been some officers reached out and said they feel like they need some education. One gave me an example that there was like a noise ordinance change that's now 24/7 as opposed to after a certain hour. And he says half the people he spoke with who were also officers had no idea. And so I'm curious about, what sort of education efforts, how this will be sort of laid out to all the officers as well. So then I think, well, it's going to take 3 months to roll it out. Is 90 days enough time? So I don't think it should be a year, though. Okay. I'm good.
Thank you, Counselor. I would kind of add to your point. Our minors that are in an area where there's alcohol and where there is a bunch of adults, I would not I was a helicopter parent. So I have 4 grown children now, and I was a helicopter parent. I did not allow them to go to these places and hang out. So those parents who allow their kids to behave in this, or to do or go to these places where these types of things are occurring and they're part of a crowd, and you know as well as I do, working out at the fair.
Sure.
You disperse crowds when they start congregating, especially teenagers, because it starts getting contentious. There's a bully, somebody's the butt of a joke or whatever. And so I totally have some experience here. I don't want another teenager lost. That's a problem for me. And when we have these issues around adults and teenagers are around that, that's problematic for me. So,
Sure.
sorry about that.
No, I definitely want to, this is, people are saying it's a Band-Aid. I think it's less than a Band-Aid. There needs to be a deeper conversation about TPD and their relationship with the police officers at TPS. I was speaking with the TPS officer. He says, we know about these gangs that are in these schools. We deal with them on these resource officers, and there may be connections that are already there, but there is a deeper conversation for sure that needs to happen.
Much.
Counselor Archie, can I provide you a little bit of clarification?
Please.
Just to follow up on Deputy Chief Wilmerhauser. We've had a curfew since 1995, so procedurally it would operate the same that it has. The TPD does write curfew tickets throughout the city. Downtown, it's a bit of a challenge because of the resources and the demand after midnight on Friday and Saturday. So this ordinance only changes the curfew in the IDL by 2 hours, Sunday through Thursday, and by 3 hours on Friday and Saturday. So it moves it from 12 or 11 p.m. to 9 p.m. So it's just a time change. There's not a procedural change that would take place. It would be the exact same that's been in place since 1995. Some of this is cleanup language. And then I want to, I echo your sentiment that all people should be downtown. And there was a lot of discussion. It should be open for everyone. There's a lot of discussion in this small committee about, well, what about concerts? Well, what about Guthrie Green? Well, what about this? What about that? What about the PAC, right? That we recognize that there are a lot of events that we want every Tulsan to come to. And that's why there's the provision that if you're in an establishment, right, we know that restaurants stay open late. And, we've had an email that said, I do my homework at a coffee shop that's open till 1 o'clock in the morning, right? We want patrons to come downtown. We want them for legitimate purposes. What we are trying to do is discourage the loitering, the hanging around, the folks that aren't down here for anything other than really to kind of be part of a scene that they're not fitting into. So we do encourage folks to come downtown. There's a much discussion, much consideration given to that.
Sure. How many tickets were written, how many loitering tickets were written at the Crybaby Hill event before the shooting happened? Because my understanding was there was a party, police interacted, dispersed a little bit, and then they went down to QT, and then Crybaby, and then there was a shooting. That was after midnight, so the laws that we have on the books, we should have whatever procedure that you're describing that should have been in place, and we still had so I'm curious, did we follow the procedure, or was there discretion that the officers had? And hey, we broke up the crowd, maybe we don't have to, write all the tickets. What happened in that situation? Are you familiar?
It was last Wednesday.
Okay.
So, are you talking about curfew citations?
So yes, the curfew citations.
Okay, so-
Because all this was past curfew, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. So are you saying that, I can't speak to how many were written. Are you saying you would like us to always write curfew citations to everyone we come across?
What I'm thinking is this, there's a tension because with passing this, I think you're saying you are, right? Are you gonna get in and?
No, so our officers are some of the most compassionate individuals, and from what I've seen, are extremely understanding of youth and the predicaments they're in, and work with them and their families to get them out of certain situations and not always enforce where maybe redirection can actually occur, unless it's a continued problem. But, for instance, I think there was, I'm trying to think off the top of my head right now, 30 juvenile curfew citations written in from the previous 6 months, citywide. Because again, also, you talk about a large crowd.
Right.
You start to get into the management of that crowd. And so instead of going, okay, I need 300 people to hang out, the amount of enforcement power that has to show up on a scene to keep 300 people there just so we can issue curfew citations becomes extremely manpower intensive.
Right.
And so usually curfew citations in my head are done where you can manage that issue and then move on. We're talking about navigating a 300 to 500 person party crowd. Trying to just hold on to that is actually more dangerous to try to hold on to that crowd than it is to go, all right, we're done. You all need to go home, you need to go home, you need to go home. And that's why very little curfew enforcement has occurred downtown on Saturday nights, because we're talking about crowds of thousands and trying to pull out individual juveniles for curfew enforcement and then take them, and so take officers away from that crowd management and take them to a CIC center so that parents could show up. It's very manpower intensive to try to do that, and as I kind of described the OKC Thunder Parade, right? We go into what's the priority of the community. The priority is to try to keep them safe and keep guns from happening. Again, the priority of this is to keep the kids who are down there just looking to get out of that environment so they're no longer going to be victimized. And so we can take some enforcement action to go, the community's identified that we need you to leave this area because you have no business being down here past this time, right? Just like the current curfew, right now the city recognizes that citywide, you have no business being out past midnight, except for the defenses listed in the current ordinance anyway. So I hope that kind of answered your question as to what happened out at Crybaby Hill. Again, I don't have the specific stats. I'm just telling you that's what it looks like when you manage such a large crowd.
All right.
Counselor Dr. Ray.
Thank you. I thought this was item number 8, so I'm glad I got here in time to surface my questions.
It is.
I do see that they did. I apologize for my lateness. Most of my comments are not going to be directed at the commissioner or the deputy chief. I think y'all are trying to do the job that you're tasked to do. I will have some questions, but some of them have already been asked and answered. I am a little challenged by hearing we want to protect youth from being victimized, but they're also perpetrating. So I don't know who we're targeting now, and maybe the answer is both. Here's where my challenge is. 32 hours ago, we got this ordinance with red lines on it. I'm not challenged by the emergency clause. I am challenged by the waiver of charter council rules and order of business and adopting on, approval and adoption on first reading. 1 week ago, we sat here about how we were so stressed out with the workload that we have that we can't look at protecting other people who have time and again demanded that we do. And I'm hearing there's a crisis right now. We've got to protect our youth, and we've got to protect our downtown businesses, and we've got to protect our first responders from getting overwhelmed. Where I'm challenged is certain sponsors on this bill tabled and moved something that's just as critical in our community. So I'm really challenged by that. I'm also challenged that one of our colleagues whose name is on this, who has been in earnest working on this because she represents the area we're talking about regulating and who is on medical leave, has her name on it but never saw the draft language and is now saying What she agreed to was a process this summer to put these supports in place so that we're not just carrying a stick, but we have some carrots. And so we fast-tracked that somehow between Friday, when the draft agenda came out without this on it at all, to Monday at 3:45, when this was now on it with all of these provisions to fast-track it. When was the decision made to list it on our agenda for today? I'm looking at the sponsors. Because it
Monday
wasn't
for me.
Friday.
Monday for me.
And was that the first time you became involved in this working group, Counselor?
Yes, it was.
Okay, thank you. So,
And Counselor Gilbert can tell you a little bit about what happened over the weekend.
I know what happened over the weekend. I
Do you
also
know-
know that three of
Do
the
you
four.
want to let her talk about it?
I'm
just so-
talking right now. I know that three of the
Well,
four
you talked.
incidents that we are, yeah, I talk a lot. I'm gonna continue to, thank
Yeah,
you.
good.
Three of the four incidents that we're all very focused in on since May 5th have caused a lot of concern in the community. I'm concerned. Three of them have not been in the IDL. We can split hairs about the underpass of Greenwood being the IDL or not. The activity that was taking place was north of the IDL on Juneteenth. The other thing I'd like to say is, have something like this happen on May 10th, I don't think the rhetoric that we've heard about focusing on the criminals will be as great as focusing on the victims. And so that tells me we have a lot more work to do as a community.
Will you say what you said just now? I didn't, I'm
Had a
just really
similar
asking.
incident occurred on May 10th of this year, the rhetoric would be a lot different. And that tells me that we as a community have a lot of work to do, especially as it pertains to equity. And in general, the other hard conversations that we've been having for years. The equality indicators have not changed since 2018. I'm sorry that I missed your question about, it, but my own community has asked these questions of me. My own community, in the 32 hours I've had to engage with them, while I also do have another job in an annual meeting tomorrow, Counselor, have asked how this doesn't push the problem to the other arts and culture and entertainment district in South Tulsa, where we have had youth gun violence at the mall, where we have had stolen guns across the corridor. We have Where's Your Gun Wednesday initiatives. We have worked desperately hard to keep guns from being stolen out of District 7 that often end up in these crimes. So, again, the urgency of a warehouse not in the IDL, the urgency of Airbnbs, this is what I have written here. We have laws regulating short-term rentals, trespassing, loitering, fire marshal capacities. These are all laws that exist that could come into play, or maybe did come into play on some of these other things. I am struggling with putting a ceiling at 9 o'clock, certainly until March is way too long. I think October 1st is a Wednesday. If it's a sunset day and we get to October 1st and the data is so compelling that we need to continue, we can continue the ordinance. So I will be pushing.
We don't meet that day, just FYI. We meet on the 8th. I don't have it on my
Okay, then
calendar.
October 8th.
Is that correct?
We likely won't meet on the 8th due to the inner city visit.
So we
Okay,
don't
so
meet on
the-
the first or the 8th?
So
Why
the
aren't we meeting on the
15th.
1st?
It's just not
a scheduled
scheduled.
date.
Okay, and the 8th is what? I didn't
Inner
hear you.
city.
The inner city visit, if
So
enough
the
of you
15th
go,
or
likely you
whatever.
won't
Yeah,
meet that
should
day.
be right.
I would be more open to a 90-day approach with a lot of data. I'm concerned, I have no data presented to me in the last 32 hours that show anything about the age of these folks. I'm hearing from Youth Services Tulsa, who's also been held up as like they've been in the process. I have an email from the assistant executive director saying she cannot support this, her organization does not support it. No youth have been centered in the conversations. So I'm challenged. I'm challenged by some of the things I'm being told, and I think I'm being told because it's a short window, and it's like, trust us, we got it.
So Youth Services has been involved in these
Yes, I know, and I have an
discussions.
email right here, Counselor, from the
Thank you,
person that's
Counselor.
been involved.
We're also trying to get Youth Services embedded in our juvenile courts. I have
Okay.
had that discussion with Youth Services, a representative from Youth Services,
Mhm.
along with our courts administrator.
Okay, well, I
So,
have an
thank
email
you.
from Beth Edwards Svetlik, who I think you all had at your table, at least in 2 meetings, because it's only been going on for 6 weeks, this latest iteration, as I understand, correct? Okay. At this point, I don't think we're relying on data-driven information to inform this ordinance. I would have to agree, because I don't have the data. Now, if there's data you all have seen, it would be great if you could apply that and send that to the rest of us that have to make this decision, and the public that's also trying to understand. The concerns with crowds have largely been focused on Friday and Saturday nights. The current proposal is 7 days a week. It seems unnecessarily restrictive. This is from the person at your table representing the youth voice. I agree that if Fridays and Saturday nights are the problem, let's attack the problem on Fridays and Saturday nights. I also am concerned about where that drives the problem. Does it come to East Tulsa, where we don't have the Arctic and all these dedicated impact units? Does it come to South Tulsa, where we, Major Wilmershauser, and then Major Roberts, leading Mingo Valley, we've had to do those targeted enforcements. I had Major Alexander on a special assignment with his folks because of a hookah lounge. Now, in our community, we go after the leasehold, the property owners with the leases. That seems to be how we have gotten these businesses that are attracting this to move on. Different parts of town are gonna do it different ways. But where I am challenged is this procedurally, really. The process, we're being told several different conflicting pieces of information that I, like my colleague here, have not really had time to vet myself. I will say, since being inaugurated in December of this year, this is the most community engagement by email, by text message, by phone call, by social media, on anything that we've put up, including some other quote-unquote controversial ordinances. And from across segments of the community. And by and large, the consensus that I am getting from my constituents is, yes, something needs to be done. I'm not sure this is it, because I feel like it's not that different than the laws we have, and it's going to push some of this activity into parts of our community where we don't have those resources for all the reasons we just heard here. So I'm inclined to say regulations, yes, targeted to the identified problems that I guess data would support, that it's a Friday, Saturday issue, that we should get regular data updates. I appreciate that Bricktown has implemented this in Oklahoma City, and it seems to have worked for their needs. What I cannot find is what it has done to the nearby neighborhoods of Bricktown or beyond. I need some time to either have my aide do some research or me make calls down there and find out. The other thing is, was there any discussion about just making this a citywide 9 p.m.? And if so, why was the decision not to? And then the other thing that I did want to wrap back on Counselor Archie. I also made a note here of why we redlined enforcement to have this updated language of probable cause. And I put a question, why not reasonable suspicion? As I understand it, I'm not an attorney, so I'm looking to Jack. Reasonable suspicion is a lower threshold in terms of taking arrest action. Is that true or not true?
So reasonable suspicion applies to the stop in the conversation. Probable cause applies to the issuing of a citation, which is what that language refers to.
So did we not do reasonable suspicion to avoid like a stop and frisk type measure?
Well, again, if you look at where that is in the ordinance, it relates to issuing the citation.
Okay.
So that's what the court will require for considering the citation is probable cause.
The concerns that are coming from lots of segments of my community are that somehow this will be used as a stop and frisk, a license to stop and frisk. So is there any intention of it? There's a lot of confusion. I appreciated the one example that you used, and I appreciate your feelings about what's going on here. A lot of kids under the age of 18 don't have ID, or if they do, it's like a school ID that says what grade they're in. You could be a senior in high school and be 19. You can be a student at TCC or Tulsa Tech and be 16. So how do we verify? We take them to the CIC and call parents, I think is what, or guardians, which is things that we already do when we encounter these kinds of things right now with our ordinance as it is. I think for me to get to a place where today I would feel like I'm informed enough, which I would really like more data before 5 o'clock. Whatever data you all were provided should be provided to the rest of us that have to make this decision. To me, definitely sunset October 15th, not in March. And to me, Friday, Saturdays, 9 o'clock. And I do want to hear why there was no discussion, or if there were discussions about going citywide, why the decision was to just really hone in on the IDL when we know in the last 6 weeks, we've had things outside the IDL. In the last 6 months, we've had things in East Tulsa and South Tulsa with youth, with guns. So for those of you who've been doing the working group, I'm looking to Counselor Gilbert and Hall Harper mostly because it sounds like Counselor Lakin just joined on Monday. You know, how did we get to this place in 2 meetings over 6 weeks and deciding to make it this and not these other elements?
We definitely had that conversation. Should it be citywide versus downtown, and we weighed both options. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think we ended up saying this is the greatest problem area. And if we need to expand outside, then we can always come to the table quickly and do that. But we didn't want to like punish the whole for, based on when there's a specific problem that's existing in the IDL.
And the problem being crowd control or the problem being
Crowd
youth with
control, and that's what I
guns?
wanted to,
Okay.
yeah, that too. Because
Because youth with guns is happening February at
Everywhere.
3 incidents
Exactly.
in southeast Tulsa.
Yeah, yeah. That's not an isolated incident, it's just, it all happens within the IDL.
So what I'm hearing though, at least from Deputy Chief Wilmershauser, it's more about how do we do crowd control?
Correct, and that's what I was
Get
getting
the
ready to say.
younger ones to leave sooner.
Because we talked a lot about that, and it hasn't come really in detail at this table, and I don't know why, but the strategy, the overall strategy, as I understand it, as I was informed, is that we have to get ahead of the problem. Once it gets to 12 o'clock or 11 o'clock, it's out of control. So no, they can't take the time to write
Yeah.
citations. It's a much bigger problem then. The strategy, as I understand it, as when they move the time up in Oklahoma City, is that they're getting a lot of those youth out of there before it becomes the big issue that's uncontrollable at that time. And so that's the approach. Will it work? We don't know. What we're doing, at this point, we're just trying to do something, and that's why I said, I agree that something needs to happen, that we are in a critical state, but I also have this concern over here about officer discretion and how they're actually going to be implementing or enforcing that law. Because we have the numbers of what the equality indicators tell us, and that historically, in this country for that matter, and certainly in this city, that certain groups of people are treated differently when they come into contact with law enforcement. We can't sit around here and act like that doesn't happen. It happens every day. We had the 2 kids that were a couple summers ago, not far from my house, walking down the street, going from one home to another home to play video games in the summer on a street with no sidewalks. And they probable cause pulled them over because they were jaywalking. Okay, so let's not act like, and that made national news. And
We
nothing
settled the
happened to
case
those
on it.
officers. And they were a task force. And they were walking from, and they didn't have anything, one of them's pants was literally pulled off of him.
And there weren't any sidewalks either.
There were no sidewalks. And so we know that these things happen. Let's not sit around this table and act like everyone is treated fairly. And so if you are a Holland Hall student going downtown to see, what was the concert that was?
Josh Groban.
No, the other one, the first one we talked about.
Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift, right? These are the conversations we had. And you got the young ladies coming out with the cowboy boots and the little short dresses and blah, blah, blah. How are they going to be treated? Clearly, they're going to be treated differently. So let's stop acting like that's not going to happen. You know, if they got a ticket, or they say, okay, we'll go into your car and go on home. Everybody's not going to be treated that way. And that's my concern. So, again, whatever officers are down there enforcing, they need to have body cameras on. If reports come in, I definitely want to be made aware of those so that we can address those issues immediately. And not this, let's gather the wagons and support. Certain officers are covered. If they're well-liked, then they're backed. If they're not well-liked, then they get charges filed on them. So let's just be honest about the whole situation. Yes, we are in a critical state and something needs to be done. But we need to make sure that everybody is treated fairness and justice.
Counselor Lake, can I have you next?
Okay. Counselor Dutton, I totally respect your request for time. I know you're busy yesterday. I watched a little bit of the Board of Adjustment meeting, so I know you've had your hands full. So I get it. So you don't want to vote on it tonight because you haven't had enough time? Good by me. You need to say nothing else. With respect to just the conversations that we had with Tulsa Police Department, you know, I have to put a lot of value in what they say relating to what they're experiencing downtown during the summer months. I have never walked a day in their shoes, and they came to me for the first time, or I was involved for the first time in the conversations on Monday, listening to their perspective. And I want to support them just as I do the Tulsa Fire Department when they say, hey, look, we can't have fireworks on July the 4th. You know, that seems like, you know, an unfun thing to have to support, because I like people having fun with their families out there. But at the same time, I really do respect Tulsa Fire Department and its requests of us to continue that ordinance because of the harm that it could be doing. TPD has rarely come to us and said, look, we have an emergency. This is a serious situation and we need your help right now. We would not be asking our fellow council colleagues to do a first reading approval of this if we weren't in an emergency. So I have to rely on TPD. TPD asked us, they said, and I think the consensus generally originally was, hey, we need to have a shorter sunset clause on this, but TPD was really focused in on trying to get us as much information as possible. They said, you know, we're just not gonna have enough time to get you very much information in the 3 months. But I understand people's concerns about that, and I can support that. The emergency also deals with the summer months. You know, if we wait for 30 more days to do this, then we're almost out of summer. Most kids will be going back into school. Their schedules will be changing. They'll start to get interested in other things, after-school things, that doesn't cause them to come downtown. So I think that's one of the important elements of considering this. And then the other thing that I heard, and I think we've touched on it just a little bit, but I continue to hear on Monday the element of concern for bystanders. So it's not just the perpetrators, it's everybody else who's there. And so that really weighed heavily on me, as that if you're able to disperse these crowds, then you don't have as many people who could be victims in the situation versus just perpetrators. I don't believe that there's many people who are 18 and under who are, or under 18 who are necessarily causing the crimes, but they could be victims of the crimes. And heck, I don't want anybody to be a victim of the crime, but I don't want anybody's kids to be victims of the crimes either. So that really stood out. And then the example, going back to what Councilor Hall Harper was saying, in Bricktown, we were told that officers are going through saying at 8 o'clock, hey, curfew's coming at 9 o'clock. You can't be down here at 9 o'clock. It's just moving them along before they ever have a chance to congregate. So those are the reasons why I thought it was important for me to put my name on this, and that's why I think it's important for us to move this thing forward. I'll wholly support the sunset clause change. I'll wholly support coming back and getting updates on this. But I really do think it's in the best interest of our community right now, which is a scenario that I never have experienced really as a counselor, to my knowledge, where TPD is coming and saying, look, we have something we can't control anymore. We need your help. And so that's why I'm strongly supporting this. I know there are going to be unintended consequences and outcomes for this. I am not a fool to believe that we aren't going to be distributing some of this in other parts of our community. But my hope also is that we're not, because downtown is our central gathering place, that maybe in some way, shape, or form, we're distributing some of this equally out, so that we're not just moving the concentration from one place to another. We're saying there's less concentration all over our city of things that could go awry. So I appreciate you all coming to us and making this known, and I really do support the opinions of our business owners too. We don't often have our business owners come to us and say collectively, hey, look, we need your help. Not on safety and crime-related stuff. A lot of times it's on, hey, we need your help in other ways. This is a very rare occurrence.
Brian, you had something to add?
I appreciate the opportunity, Counselor. I've a few notes that I've taken throughout here. First, about the sunset. We spent a lot of time debating and talking about the sunset, whether it should be next summer. There is certainly a cyclical nature to a lot of the broad range of issues that we experience in downtown, ranging from homelessness, ranging from youth-related, college students who are home. One of the reasons we discussed March as opposed to next June or July, and as opposed to December, is to get through the ever-changing cycle of summertime, fall break that generally occurs, and even the holidays when people are home around Thanksgiving and Christmas, just to provide consistency and clarity across the board. That said, whatever decision is made regarding the sunset clause and the timing of that, we continue to be partners and will collaborate at whatever point in time we need to on that.
Can I follow up with a comment?
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm glad you said that, because I remember that conversation. But as a counselor sitting around here, we can modify it in 2 weeks if we want to. Okay, so we don't have to wait on that, so remember that. That's just saying we're definitely going
This
to
is
come,
when, yes.
and that's the date for the public. But we can modify something, it's just a matter of us putting it on our agenda. So just keep that in mind.
Regarding data and information, police-specific data and information, I would defer to the deputy chief or commissioner to provide better insight on statistics. However, we can look very closely at foot traffic, at visitor numbers into downtown, and the direct impacts on businesses' bottom lines, sales generated each day, each week in downtown, and those numbers are trending down. We're hearing directly from our small business community, and these small businesses are Tulsans. They are individuals who are oftentimes moms and dads, my age, older. They are living in districts all around the city of Tulsa. These are not LA, New York City-based real estate investment trusts. These are our community members, our neighbors, Booker T. Washington graduates, that are sustaining businesses that are supporting the city's bottom line across the entire city. And they are saying, and they are reporting declines in their day-to-day, in their year-over-year, partly attributed to a lack of perceived safety and conditions of safety in downtown as well. We do have data visible on our website that tracks foot traffic and visitor numbers into our downtown. I'd be happy to provide links to you all before the 5 p.m. meeting. I also, my hope is that this passes today with the emergency clauses and is able to be implemented over the weekend. If it's not, if there's not decision to move forward, I would invite you all to Second and Elgin at 11 o'clock on Friday to join me with the deputy chief. I'm hoping that's not reaching out too much, deputy chief. To join us to see the very visible impacts that we experience down here. I don't want to say every single day, but certainly Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays in downtown. This is not negating the severity of the issues in the warehouse shooting on Friday evening, Saturday into Saturday morning. The Riverside Airbnb incident that happened blocks away from my own house. This has been an ongoing issue and one that needs to be modified as quickly as possible. And to Councilor Archie, the comments about welcoming and safe. A part of our organization, our goal is to message that downtown is a neighborhood for everyone. This is the community's backyard. Excuse me. A part of creating a welcoming place for youth, for adults, for college students, for the elderly, is ensuring that this is a safe place for one and all. I think to Councilor Dector Wright's questions or comments earlier, this is not solely seeking to change behaviors or habits of people 17 and under. It's not exclusively to save or to protect bar goers late at night. It can be all of these things at once. I care about the individuals who are coming into downtown and oftentimes probably maybe take it a little bit too seriously of how much it impacts me anytime a window is broken in a restaurant, anytime a person has a bad experience walking down the street and has a negative interaction. our organization, our team members, we care greatly about creating a welcoming place where people feel safe, where people feel welcome, and feel like they can be included as a part of the progress overall. So I apologize if what I was attempting to articulate earlier was saying that youth do not have a right to be in downtown. That goes very much against my own opinions and virtues and what we try to stand up as an organization overall. We also, one last, I think actually, I'm sorry, one final piece about the Bricktown. And to give credit where credit is due, it's actually Chief Larson who brought the specific ordinance for Oklahoma City's ordinance, but I've been in conversations with my counterpart and peers in downtown Oklahoma City. The Bricktown ordinance was adopted in 2023 as a direct result of gun and youth violence in Bricktown concentrated in and around their bar and entertainment areas. It has proven to be successful. They adopted a similar curfew, I think, at 11 p.m. in other areas of their downtown. While I do not fully understand nor know the impacts and what that has led to areas outside of their downtown, Downtown Oklahoma City Partnership has indicated to me that they work in partnership with police, with their city officials, and that this is a very positive solution that has been implemented in their district, and one that I've discussed with peers all around the country as well. I think what I am most confident in is that this is a temporary solution right now. We have a sunset I think the sunset in about 9 months that gives us time, whether it's in 2 weeks from today, to the counselor's point, or in 9 months to figure out whether this is the exact solution, whether it needs to be modified, or whether it just goes away completely. That option is at the table here. This is not perfect. I have concerns about the impact on businesses, on the impact of public spaces, and people feeling safe and right to come into downtown. And I am of the mindset that we cannot let perfection get in the way of progress given the emergency situation at this point in time. And I will be here today, this morning, almost this afternoon, and at 5 o'clock this evening, able to answer any additional questions that you have, seeking to have this approved and adopted today.
Thank you, Brian. Counselor Dutton, we're going back around the horn again.
Okay, I'll try to be brief, which is rare. So I am still concerned with the lack of data, and I am looking at this Oklahoma City juvenile arrest patterns and incident highlights that created this curfew. The data and the trends are still unfortunately not known. So I think we're putting the cart before the horse by claiming that there's all of this concentration and we are not presented with actual factual data. That's concerning to me, to be able to make an informed decision. Another thing I considered while we were talking, on page 43 of the Equality Indicator report, and I know that we're not talking by race here, but there are facts that have to do with outcomes to specific people. And with ICE in the mix right now and the environment of policing based with those things going on right now for our Hispanic community, it's concerning to me that Fairwind TPD. According to the Equality Indicator, and these are just things I'm going to throw out for informational purposes, the incidence of officer use of force at a rate that is more than 9.5 times the rate of Hispanic Latinx Tulsans. In 2023, we had just reported, that doesn't mean I think these numbers are flexible in that what gets reported and what doesn't. 2,366 Black subjects experienced police use of force. 0.322 was the number of Hispanics that received force by the police department. So I'm not trying to pick and parse out. I'm going on data, and I think this needs to be arranged and agreed on upon data. My understanding, there's only been 2 meetings that this was brought, and again, Laura Bellis was not able to get an actual form indicating the process of the working group on how this was going to be presented. And so I'm having, there were some comments made about after midnight criminal activity. I really, again, harken back to who is doing that criminal activity after midnight. I really like data. You know, are we talking about people that are coming out of bars intoxicated because they've been served too many? I'm just saying, I don't have any data before me. I'd like actual Tulsa police data indicating how many people are arrested for public intoxication, vandalism, adults that are downtown after midnight, fights, DUIs. I think those are all factors that need to be considered when we're talking. And we don't have any voices of the youth here at this table. And we're all trying to create something that has not incorporated our partners within the youth community to have a say as well. And I think that's a huge missing factor. I would be happy if we tabled this until we have all of the information and clear understanding of specificities of how this will be handled. I was one of those juveniles that if I were, 19 and there was a curfew and I was out on the street and an officer came to me and asked me for my ID, I'd say no. And then what is the consequence for somebody that says no and refuses based on probable cause that we're not even aware of what is going to be entailed in that here? So those are just my comments. I tried, I know, and then I said.
Just want to make sure
Counselor
Counselor gets to
Kenny.
hear it.
I said that was rare.
Counselor
Can I
Bank.
speak real quick?
Yes, sir.
A couple of things I want to clarify, because I don't know the data that was just thrown out. We were always more than willing to provide data to any counselor here who's looking to understand crime trends and everything else better completely.
I asked 2.5 weeks ago for crime trends for my district, and I still haven't received it. Just FYI.
Okay, so TPD answered roughly 250-something thousand calls last year. And other than a physical control hold, only used about 300, there was only 300 so uses of force in all those interactions. And also, use of force only occurs during arrests. And so with that, I think we had something around 15,000 arrests again. And again, only around 300. So there was some data thrown out. I just wanted to clarify that. Our analysts also, I'm sorry that has not been received. Have you spoken to Major Phelps or Major Onosword about that? Okay, well, I know that our analysts are tasked out with a lot of protest stuff that was going on, as well as some of this crime things, but I will follow back up with you and make sure that that occurs. There was also something that was talked about from multiple counselors in regards to a legal threshold. I know there was comments about probable cause, reasonable suspicion. Counselor Dr. Wright talked about stop and frisk. So I do want to also make sure that everybody understands what that really is. So in order to actually frisk someone, it is a legal process that not only do I have to show that that I have a reasonable suspicion that you are or about to commit a crime, I then also have to articulate that you're armed and dangerous. I can't just walk up and start to search you just because you've committed a crime. I have to articulate that additional step. And to Commissioner Roberts' promise of transparency and accountability, and to what we've talked about, Counselor, of there will be body worn cameras on, and it will easily be reviewed. But there were some stats and some legality things thrown out, and I just wanted to clear those up real quick.
Counselor Bingle, if it's okay to chime in, going back to some of this data. I mean, we have a very active bar and entertainment district. There are always going to be situations where public intoxication, people are thrown out of these establishments because they're overly intoxicated. The issues that we are talking about right now are youth. I have a video on my phone that unfortunately I cannot project up here, but it shows what because of the TikTok, the phones up there, and everything that's going on, and I sound like an idiot probably saying that. These are high school students who are fighting at 1 o'clock in the morning in a parking lot, venturing onto private property and a patio. This is something that's happening every single weekend in downtown, and I don't have specific statistics or data, but this is evidence that we see and have proof of every single weekend. And I don't know another way to articulate the emergency that exists, that restaurant owners are fearful for their employees who are trying to depart. Minimum wage employees who are coming from all walks of life all around our entire region, who are not feeling safe to leave their establishments, who are possibly going to quit because they feel unsafe being in downtown. That is not a welcoming message that we want to anyone, employees, visitors, residents.
Well, to your point real quick, I know a lot of 19-year-old high schoolers, 19-year-old seniors. So,
And that's fair. This is like I've said from the very beginning, this is not the cure-all for our problems in downtown. This is targeting a very niche issue that we have and attempting to protect individuals, individuals of all ages. One of the things that Councilor Dr. Wright brought up before, and I understand the concern that Youth Services of Tulsa or others may have with this curfew. They're not alone. I still have outstanding questions and concerns about the implementation of this, like many of you all do as well. And I'm not letting that stop my support and that of the organization to move this forward. I will acknowledge that there is, I think, a second or third meeting set with Youth Services of Tulsa, My Brother's Keeper, TPD, Impact Tulsa, and the Mayor's Office of Youth, Children, and Services on Friday, I think at 11 o'clock, talking about alternative methods, methods that are alternative to enforcement for youth-related needs that exist within our community. Kids they need jobs. They need places to feel safe and be. That's not at Second and Elgin at 11 o'clock at night in our bar and entertainment district, or 2 o'clock in the morning in our bar and entertainment district. And I hope that this body takes action to find solutions and alternatives to curfews and enforcement mechanisms, and is able to fund those moving forward as well, if we're looking for alternative solutions.
Also, I need clarification, just to follow up. Are you saying something different than the heat maps and stats we provided?
I
In the
requested a detailed, all the way from petty crimes to violent crimes.
Other than what we
Then
provided
the
you?
balloon,
And all the other things?
Yeah,
Okay,
I
all right.
really needed more detail so that
Okay.
I can target specific neighborhoods and town halls and whatnot with information.
Okay.
Thank you.
Um,
Are you done?
Let everybody go.
Okay. You want me to come back to you?
Maybe.
All right. Counselor Archie?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Kurtz, I would also encourage, if Greenwood Chamber could be a part of those discussions, as well. So, question number one, if we modify the ordinance, can we still vote on it tonight? Is that a thing?
Yeah, we can amend it on a
Okay.
motion.
Okay.
What's your question? I'm trying to figure out what you just asked.
So, some folks have suggested maybe we shorten the time in which we'll review it.
Right, just as
So it
Councilor
can be-
Dr. Wright says.
Just so you know, you can amend on a motion, Counselor, we're all equals.
Okay.
So
Yeah, just-
don't ever think it has to happen
Weeks and
the way
weeks.
we typically do it.
Sure.
On a motion, you can
But
add
it,
or to take away whatever you want on any ordinance that we ever get.
but it'd be to move approval as presented with the following changes.
Okay, I appreciate that. Number two, the citations would be addressed to the parents or to the child?
The citations issued to the child, however, then the parents have to get involved, the parents have to show up to court, they have to do all those things. So, and then also there is, and I think it's built into here, there's enforcement pieces also to parents who blatantly shuck their responsibility, and then we would do that. Also talking about root issues, we're always working with ABLE, the Alcohol Beverage Law Enforcement, and other TFD actually, to address all businesses to make sure that those businesses are in compliance with what they should be doing.
Yeah, obviously, they shouldn't be serving people under 18.
Right.
You know, or
Yeah.
even under 21, for sure. Yeah, for sure, at 21. This is a question for our law enforcement, or maybe those on the working group. A rubric for success. So what framework or indicators are you thinking of, or have been set up to let us know whether or not we've been successful at the end of 6 months or 8 months or whatever it is? Maybe paint me a picture of what success looks like at the end of this, so I can have just a better idea of what we're thinking that would look like.
We have discussed bringing this back, showing statistics of how it is helping. If it's not helping, then yeah, let's have the discussions of amending the ordinance.
So when we say
So-
helping, maybe we'll double click on it. We see less shootings, or we see less youth under 18, or we see more compliance with the curfew, or?
No, so I see this as a breakout in different crimes that may have been decreases in crime.
Okay.
If so, are we still seeing a spike? This isn't perfect, and I said that at the very beginning. This is just a start. So, but we have discussed, or bringing it back as a follow-up. We do this all the time. We have discussions about our capital improvement programs. How our, I'm sorry, my grandson just took his first step.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful.
Yeah, so, and I wasn't there, but anyhow, he, absolutely putting together something we need to continue this discussion. We need to continue finding out if this is reducing crime, is it helping with crowd controls downtown? There's lots more discussions on this.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe Oklahoma City would have, since they went through this process, if they had metrics of, indicators they thought they could look back and sort of compare and contrast. Because obviously we all want a safe city, which means no crime, nobody's getting shot, everybody's, enjoying one another. But just sort of articulating what we're trying to do with a little bit more clarity would allow me to communicate it much more effectively. And so, I was not a part of the working group, and there's no problem with me not being a part of it, but I think.
Can I
But
make a
well,
clarification real quick?
oh,
This
yeah.
was not a working group.
Okay.
I mean, I see the working group as being animal welfare,
Yeah.
fines and fees. I had brought this to Counselor Hall Harper and to Counselor Bellis because the chief had approached me with it, and I think he also approached them about the ordinance in Oklahoma City. It was just getting the group together to have this discussion of what we can do, because we heard the concerns from the business owners in downtown Tulsa. I too, I heard what you said about downtown, and we want to be a welcoming city, right? We want everybody to feel safe, everywhere. So that's why I mentioned at the very beginning, if we're seeing this being pushed out into other areas of Tulsa, yeah, let's talk about amending our whole curfew ordinance as a whole through the city of Tulsa. So the thing that would hurt me the most is if we set a 9 o'clock curfew throughout the city. what that would do to high school students, especially when school starts, and they start playing football. They have basketball games. What is that? Because those games won't start until 8 o'clock. So, so that is something for us to consider also, but also continuing those discussions, especially with Tulsa Public. So,
Okay.
Counselor Dr. Wright?
Thank you. I think we have defenses for what you just shared about school-involved activities, whether they end at 9 or 11, as I read them in the ordinance as it currently exists, so I'm not worried about that. I am worried that, do we have an alternative juvenile court set up right now?
We have spoken with courts and CIC to make sure they're prepared and they're working through.
Do they have the funding? Because I know we didn't really even fund some of the fines and fees requests. So one of the fines and fees initiatives was to have night court, which was promoted as a way for these adults who are responsible for youth to be able to appear and not have to miss work and things. And so it sounds like we have a night court, but we don't have like alternatives. And I understand that they can do a Rule 8 hearing and not have to pay the $200 fee, but they'll have to do $200 worth of community service based at a minimum wage rate. Is that accurate, not accurate?
No, a Rule 8 hearing takes away your obligation.
So no payment.
To have to pay if you're physically not able to do those
Physically.
community service hours or those things.
So would service hours be involved for the juvenile or the parents? guardian?
It depends who was charged.
So we could have kids doing community service to work off the $200 or $400 or whatever it ends up being.
Potentially, there's also alternative sentencing that judges can do. So juvenile cases, just from our like normal municipal court experience, they're different, the process. So traffic, you still see a juvenile in open court. These cases are more in the criminal misdemeanor nature. So they are closed private court hearings and dockets with the judges. And so within those, judges have the same, and prosecutors, the same ability to grant deferred sentences. They have the same ability to grant alternative sentencing or working with people. I have seen that in the past. I don't think I can go into like on a specific case because those are closed confidential proceedings, but they have the same ability to do those things that we know them to do in adult cases.
Can juveniles end up in the Juvenile Justice Center based on enforcement of this downtown
This one
curfew?
by putting it at the city of Tulsa, it would go through the municipal
Okay.
court system, and they utilize CIC.
Can you tell us what CIC stands for?
Community Intervention Center?
Sounds right.
Yes.
I'm asking these questions because these are questions that
Yeah.
were asked of me as their voice at
So-
this table.
At least when I was there, again, anybody, if I get something wrong based on a decade old of information, jump in, but it was in the bottom floor of the municipal court. I believe it is still there. That's where, or it was, it's not that's still there. So that is where it was. So now it's at a different location. And then they contact their parents to come get them.
They route
Yeah,
Where is it located, the
the
CIC?
juvenile,
now it's,
yeah,
Archer or whatever.
So the Juvenile Justice Center?
Justice Center?
yeah. And so it's basically a hub, and so previously officers could spend 2 or 3 hours
Yeah.
trying to locate parents. So it is a hub where they will take the juvenile
Right.
and process and determine which route, whether they qualify for being taken into custody. They help facilitate finding parents, finding a legal guardian, and so those next steps.
Okay, so a couple of reports or updates that I'd like to have before I can feel informed. We know a lot of rhetoric was out around the Juvenile Justice Center and how they were treating juveniles. Community members are asking me, have those things improved if we're going to have more juveniles potentially interacting in that system? I don't have an answer to that. I was also told that the downtown partnership was gonna conduct a survey and collect data. Did that happen?
That has not given the expedited timeline to get this in place before summer gets even worse than it's already been since the
When
onset
do
of
you
May.
plan to do the survey?
Because of this implementation, that survey may not happen until sometime, once we have the ability to show impact of this. So let me rephrase, let me actually start fresh. Their survey was to be seeking feedback from the downtown business community on their thoughts about the adoption of the curfew overall. A broad survey was not conducted, however, myself, members of our board, we have had conversations with the business community. The larger group setting that Councilor Gilbert talked about, which was predominantly Blue Dome and Arts District entertainment establishments that were, I think, safely to say, fully supportive of implementing this. I think moving forward, surveys that we would conduct about this curfew would be more about the impacts of it and maybe less about supporting it and more about the impacts, success measures, things that need to be modified as we approach whatever sunset date needs to be in
Thank you.
place.
I think the sunset date needs to be October 22nd because fall break is the 15th to the 17th, and we're not meeting before that. So I'm going to amend my request to sunset it earlier to October 22nd.
Can I add one additional thing, Counselor?
Yeah.
About feedback and surveys. I don't know if you were here at the beginning when I spoke, that our board of directors that is made up of businesses, property owners of all different districts, property types, different business types across downtown, had a substantial discussion at our board meeting last week, and that is where there was a significant consensus that pushing the curfew forward as quickly as possible is the appropriate decision.
I understand that's what you're asking for. You said it several times
Yep.
yesterday and today. I got it. They want this right now. What I'm trying to figure out is how to make sure that we get the information we need. You've separated a lot. Thank you. Downtown people want it. I also work near downtown and have young people in facilities in downtown several times a year. So I just want to say, I am downtown. I have patrons downtown. I have kids that trust my organization to take care of them when they're downtown. For data purposes, I'd like whatever data was provided to get the non-working group to this place, provided to the rest of us. So you must have them in emails, have our staff circulate that right now. I think when we start collecting data, right now, since this is let's see how it's going, we need to hear from the business community, we need to hear from the youth-serving community and the youth. We have a youth council, so I know time is of the essence, we had no time. I barely have had time to even get these questions together. But if we implement this as of this weekend, data needs to be collected on a weekly basis. Number of juveniles cited, their race, their age, were they doing other crimes or just existing in a space? These are questions my community wants to know about, and I want to know too. If they're carrying guns, what happens? Is it a stolen gun? Who's responsible for the guns that are getting stolen? We've talked a lot about that in my community, not creating crimes of opportunity. So, we have to have more conversations about that. What are the outcomes when it does come to now a parent is involved, they've been called, they have to go to court for $200, or the kid does? How many service hours? Where are they putting those service hours? There are concerns in my inbox about putting vulnerable youth to work without pay because they're working off service hours. These are not my words. I didn't have that concern until other people put that in front of me, but I want to be able to report back. It's this many service hours, and it's in these nonprofits or wherever it's gonna end up. I don't even know how that works out.
Do you want an answer to that real quick?
No, not right now. I still am on a roll here, but yes, I do want to answer.
Able to say the outcomes of
Um,
cases, 'cause they're-
I'm glad that organizations are already planning to meet on Friday. I think it's important to not try to persuade a vote based on what we think certain people need to hear, because it's concerning that youth services has been held out as like they've been at the table the whole time they're on board. They're clearly not on board today.
That's
And
news to me.
Okay,
Since they've
well,
been.
I got the email, so
Okay, I
there
didn't.
might be a reason they felt more comfortable approaching me than people that have been at the
Probably so.
table with a very
And
strong
thank goodness that they felt
lens
comfortable talking
about
to you.
it needs to happen right now. Not just the youth serving organizations, but youth themselves. Youth themselves. It cannot be about them without them. That we have a youth council. They have already come to us and said things like Counselor Hall Harper said. We don't have transportation. We don't have things to do. We don't have jobs.
Well, and they're from working families where maybe the mom has a job and is unable to,
So
doesn't have the resources necessary.
if we're gonna have these KPIs to see if we're on the path,
What is the, yeah.
I think a weekly report, I don't know, every Tuesday, so it's before Wednesday, so we can read in an email, this is how it's going. Right now, a lot of us that don't have the data, all I have to go on is what I've been able to pick up out of the media and what I know has gone on in my community. So if you all have these data reports, data continues to be a way that we try to drive our policymaking decisions. There's other data requests that other working groups have made that we still are waiting on data. So I'm making a request right now. I want to hear how that's impacting business, positive, negative, neutral. I want to hear how it's impacting youth. I want to hear if there's young adults who aren't under 18, who, like Counselor Archie has used the example, 19, 20 years old, not old enough to be in a bar, but could be in a restaurant, getting kind of snagged into this, the unintended consequence. How often is that happening? How often are things being diverted because now we have this new tool, right? How many times have, since we've had it in place, did crowds assemble and we were able to get them out of there at 9? We can't just go on hunches and feelings. So, since we're starting this thing, obviously to Counselor Lakin's point, this can pass with people not voting for it today. At least 2 people not voting for it can still pass with this 2/3 majority requirement. But we need to collect the data, because I don't want to get to October 22nd and be like, we don't have enough data to even determine if we should sunset or continue. We're asking right now to collect the data. And yes, race, age. I'd also like to know how many of these people that are perpetuating the problem actually live in Tulsa if they're coming in from outside Tulsa. I think that matters when we talk about what kind of interventions and services we are providing, right? If it's people coming from outside the community, it's because they don't have support in their community. So let's try to really look at who's causing the problem and how. If it's gang-related, which you see a lot of speculation that all of it's gang-related, I haven't heard that all of these things are gang-related. If they are, we need to know. If they're not, we need to be very clear and specific. Because what we start to see is assumptions being made, and that is very harmful. Not every young person out and about is in a gang, right? We know that. There's also all kinds of gangs in Tulsa, not just certain ones that people like to focus on. So there's a lot of intersections here. I need more data before 5 o'clock. Whatever data you all had to get you to the point to say, we gotta do this, other than just anecdotes, would be very helpful for me. I also, as a report back, I want to understand how this does impact the municipal court when we pass the new trespassing laws and the right-of-way obstruction laws, which we took a long time to do, and Counselor, the business committee did ask for the right-of-way obstruction laws, if you remember, and we took a long time to get there on how to do it. So now we know that municipal court has a much bigger docket, and so I want to understand from the municipal court in 90 days what this has done for them and what alternatives or diversion they may need. Do they need more interpreters at that night court? Do they need more non-English speaking interpreters? Are they seeing more youth, families of youth that don't necessarily speak English? I would just like to know. So I'm making these requests now so that we don't get to October and go, oh, we didn't track that, or we can't find the information. And I think everyone should check their emails. I know a lot of people just learned about this, right? Because they don't read our agendas. They wait till the media starts reporting or seeing social media. So check your emails. We don't normally have time to read a bunch of emails on a Wednesday because we're in here, but there are messages coming through from a variety of people. I have some of the most conservatives contacting me and saying this is too much. And some of the most liberals contacting me and saying this is too much. And some moderates that are saying, I understand we need to do something, here's my questions. And those are the questions I brought here today. I am encouraged that we can do hard things quickly when the community asks us to, and I would just ask all of my colleagues to consider that as we continue to work through some other very challenging yet necessary policy work.
Counselor Laking, your turn.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I think
Oh.
Sarah can answer some of the questions that Counselor Dr. Wright had.
I can answer some of the outcome and court based questions. So obviously like the business data and that's not my area, but so just speaking generally, not about a specific case. So there is the fine, but judges also, in my experience, have looked at these cases and inquired, are you part of a program at school? Do you participate in an extracurricular activity? Do you do these kind of things? Okay, if you bring documentation that you do that over the next 2 months, then you can get a different sentence, which could be a dismissal. And so there are those kinds of things that if you just look at the face of the ordinance aren't necessarily there, but those are available. They typically do not put them in community service with adult populations. We were, at least when I was there, and I think it's still the same, very much so don't usually assign those to specific work hours like we think of for adults. We think of nonprofits or school-based type probation because it's not appropriate usually to mix those two populations. And then on the interpretation services, they do have interpretation services. The city's implemented stipends on top of people's salaries in order to provide bilingual support as well. So that's another way. But the fines and fees work did fund some of those interpretation services, and those should be funded through FY27.
Thank you.
Okay. Counselor Laking, your turn.
I'll really work to be brief. I have 8 emails in my email box from curfews, so definitely not a major issue for the people that are responding to me. I have a ton of social media responses, and we've had really good dialogue on social media with a lot of people learning just the basics of the current curfew ordinance, the defenses in the curfew ordinance. And I think as I explain it, then people are generally more comfortable. I don't want to put words in people's mouths. Some just do not want it. A lot of people do, though, especially after they get a little bit more information. I know to Counselor Archie's point that, and I appreciate your comments, just, hey, this is a place for all people, downtown is. I totally agree with that. I want kids to be down here. I don't want a curfew down here. I don't really want to have a curfew anywhere in Tulsa. I mean, that would be the ultimate goal. But I also want people to feel safe when they come downtown. And I really am starting to get a lot of concerning statements and calls made to me about, hey, I just don't want to go downtown for a ball game or a concert or a restaurant or anything else. And that's equally as concerning. So I want 40-year-olds and 50-year-olds to come down here just as I want 15-year-olds to come down.
And gay people,
I'm-
sorry.
So can you talk, Chief, just real fast about the other efforts? So when the mayor was talking, he was also talking to us about the I think it's a $2 million grant or whatever efforts are being focused in on just getting guns off the street. And so we had the federal prosecutor, the county prosecutor, ATF, DEA, a whole bunch of other people at the conference. And I know that was one of the points of impetus for the mayor to reach out and say, hey, we're having a press conference on Monday, how can we go forward and try to create a total solution here, not just, hope that this works and then try something else and then try something else. I mean, it seems like a major effort.
Yeah, kind of described at the beginning in the fact that this is not just an enforcement strategy, even though everybody's at the table in regards to our federal partners or local partners, especially when you bring guns into the conversation. But it's also working with community partners. So the multi-million-dollar community violence intervention grant that I came and talked to you all about, this is exactly what that's kind of related to. And a lot of the data used to justify acquiring the community violence intervention grant is housed inside that narrative. And so, no, it's not just looking at an enforcement piece. It's looking at a community response using that grant, using our community partners in MBK and Impact Tulsa and YST to address youth on the front end before we see those social determinants of health fail and now they enter into the justice system.
But there's
we were talking about.
well, there's also a real strong prosecution element to this. If guns are found on the
Yes.
street, then federal agencies and other agencies are going to go after prosecuting those individuals with those guns.
Yes, and especially going after those who acquired the guns and then gave them to somebody else as well, whether it's a straw purchase or anything else like that, yes.
Yeah.
The other thing too, just talking about rubrics and success, I hope you all don't think that the police department's rubric of success is in 3 weeks, we wrote 400 juvenile citations. That's not the rubric of success. The rubric of success is we are able to manage crowds better later in the night and not have to draw resources from all over the city to come down here, and we can continue to have resources out in other parts of the city and all parts of your districts. But if we've only written 3 curfew citations in 2 weeks, that's probably a success because our officers are exercising awesome discretion and education going, hey, man, it's 9:05, remember the 9 o'clock? Oh, you're right, I'm sorry, go. And we're able to manage that. So I want everybody to understand what we're looking at is we're looking at carving out those who just do need something else to do, but downtown can't, because of what's going on, downtown just can't be that aspect of it.
Yeah, and on that last point, I guess it goes to data and just the collection of data. I think data is great. I think we need to be making our decisions based upon data, but I don't want your officers to be overburdened with collecting data and reporting too much data to us. I don't need you to make a little tick mark. I personally don't need you to make a little tick mark on every time you move people along. It'd be great for it to be measured, but I also think that your time and your officers' time and your resources are better applied in other situations. Just real quick, Jack can answer the question on service hours, but I think it's $200 is the fine, and it's calculated at the number of hours required at minimum wage to equal that $200 fine, is it not?
That's exactly what
In the
it
ordinance?
In the ordinance?
Mm-hmm. It's at the end.
That's in
That's it.
I didn't hear you say it, I just heard you say.
There's a, if you get
Yeah,
a
she
fine and a
basically
work
said
hour
how many hours
calculation,
would that
that's
be?
different.
It's like 27 and a half hours.
Is it? Yeah, I didn't know, I didn't do the calculation. And then the mayor really did overemphasize the opportunity just to try to work with the children, and I think you did an excellent job as well, to try to work with the kids and the teenagers and the youth through the Office of Children, Youth and Families, and through a wide variety of other things, so that the kids aren't in trouble, so that they're not in a situation where they are subjects where a citation may have to be issued. So we have to hit this and address this from all sides. That's all. Oh, I would say the last point, and this is a critique of me as well. We've had this ordinance on the books for 30 years-ish for curfew, and a lot of questions are being asked about it now. Any one of us could have asked it before now, including me. I've been at this table for 13 years and really haven't dug into it very much, so I wouldn't expect us to learn everything about the curfew ordinance in a very short amount of time. But we should focus more attention on it, given the high priority and urgency behind it now.
Counselor Archie.
Thank you. Yes, I believe everybody at the table, we do want downtown to be welcome to everyone. You know, the question is, how do we keep it safe? I was speaking to an officer, this is for Mr. Muhlenberg, that, am I saying it right?
Muhlenberg.
This is Wilmer Hauser.
Walmart-Hauser. Who's Mr. Muhlenberg?
He's the one.
Wait, hold on, are you?
He's really neighbors.
Oh, okay, I didn't realize that. I thought he was talking about Muhlenberg.
Sorry.
Both have long
Yeah.
days.
One,
Muhlenberg's on our social media.
Okay.
Doing all the PSAs.
yeah, we were with him yesterday. So, sorry about that.
No worries.
This is Deputy Chief Walter Tyler Jr.
Yes.
Okay. One officer I was speaking with about this ordinance suggested potentially the use of, this is not funny at all, but the use of a large bus or van potentially to house youth, instead of taking one youth or two youth at a time to the CIS at a time.
Those are called paddy wagons.
Yeah, and I've not seen them here in Tulsa, but is there, my question about tactics, are we gonna start seeing buses downtown that potentially could be filled with youth going to CIC?
No, we probably have a bigger problem if we've got 20 kids that won't leave when we're asking them to.
Yeah.
So, no.
Okay. Great.
Okay, have we addressed everybody's questions and concerns? Brian, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Commissioner, thank you. Chief, thank you.
Thank you.
All for being here today. We greatly appreciate this. Thank you, colleagues, for the robust discussion on this. Okay, now that we've taken care of item 8, let's get through the rest of the agenda. Item number 3, rezoning application Z7816 from RS3 to AG for property located south of the southwest corner of West 68th Street South and South Houston Avenue, requested by Charles and Cheryl Wood. TMAPC voted 10-0 to approve. This is in District 2. Morning, Susan. Oh, I'm sorry. Good afternoon, Susan.
Good afternoon, Susan.
Thank you for patiently waiting.
All right, so this one's pretty straightforward. This is by Turkey Mountain, just to west of Turkey Mountain on the north side of 71st Street. It's a 5-acre tract, kind of hidden back. It currently, in 1970, it was rezoned to RS3, and they have agricultural uses. They want to expand those. You can't do that in RS3. They want, what did they say they want? They want chickens, turkeys, and sheep on this piece of property, as well as doing some farming. So it's 5 acres, kind of tucked back. You can see there's a lot of other ag zone property around it. We didn't have any issues. They have some support letters from neighbors, and it was unanimously recommended for approval.
Sounds like Tulsa Green Acres.
Great.
Councilor Archie, any
Great.
concerns?
Yeah, nobody's reached out to me.
Any other questions or concerns? All right. Moving on to item 4, rezoning application Z7817 from RM1 to MX2 V55 for property located at, southeast corner of West Apache Street and LL Tisdale Parkway, requested by William Tisdale. Was here earlier. Property owners 2020 Management Incorporated. This is also in District 2. It's like TMAPC voted 9-1
It's not
to
in
recommend.
District 2.
Yeah, it's
This is
not.
not in District 2.
I think it's District 1, right?
District
District
1,
one.
sorry.
Oh, okay, well, it says District 2.
I know,
here.
yeah.
Thank you, Counselor Hall Parker. So, Susan? take it away.
Okay, so it's related to the next one. Did you say that? Do you want to, on number?
5?
Yeah, the 4 and 5 are related.
Oh, okay.
So I could cover those together. Want to read that?
Do I need to read that? Oh, nobody's hearing.
Nobody's
All right.
heard, go.
Yeah, let's read it quick. Resolution number 2938.1067 of the Tulsa Metropolitan Area Planning Commission pursuant to Title 19, Oklahoma statutes,
TMAPC voted 9-1 to amend the land use map of the comprehensive plan and recommend the city council to approve the resolution.
Okay, so this is a real interesting project. This is about 16 acres, just to the west of Reservoir Hill, by the LL Tisdale Parkway, just south of Apache. So this is really I forgot the name of his company, but William Tisdale's company, owns from Apache down to Pine, that little stretch right there, along the expressway. So the first phase, and the really interesting thing, I don't know if you can tell on this map, not that well, but the zoning is already zoned, well, it's RM1 to the south, so that's a phase 2. Once we do multifamily, it's not gonna have to come in for rezoning, they already have that ability. But this piece, he wants to introduce some commercial and medical uses first along Apache. So he has requested a mixed-use zoning designation, the designation and a comprehensive plan amendment. So right now, the land use plan says it's neighborhood, he wants mixed use, which makes perfect sense. This is, mixed use comes in different flavors. Real quickly, this is just MX2V55, which means MX2 just dictates the uses. It's community mixed use, which is not like large-scale regional, and it's in between neighborhood and large-scale regional, so really kind of just community-serving uses. Variable means that it's mixed use, but you don't have to build up to the street. It's more flexible. You have a little bit more room in setbacks and building placement, things like that. And then 55 means that's the ultimate height that you can build there. So, anyway, this is a request to that mixed-use zoning district. I know he's had a lot of meetings with the neighbors. There were a few that came out with the same things, we typically see when commercial uses are introduced, right? Traffic, introducing commercial uses, any negative impacts from that. But I'll show you his concept, and this is just a concept. It's not at all tied to the end absolute requirement here, but this is what he has in mind at this point. Those are medical uses in the north end. And then he has some mixed use in the center part of this, which includes some retail restaurants, some residential above. He's got a parking garage. You can see the ramp there in the middle of those buildings. And then some townhomes just directly south of that. So that's his concept for the first phase. And he's hoping to break ground fairly quickly on the medical. He already has some users on the medical buildings to the north. So
How many acres is this?
so this is 16 acres. Almost 17, and I think probably the part on the south is about equivalent to that also, and he's probably not
The total
gonna.
is 40 acres.
The total's 40.
This section is just 16.
Yeah, so he's gonna be able to do a lot of housing on the southern part of this too, when he gets ready.
That's exciting.
I like that.
Yeah.
All right. Any questions or comments? Other than I like that? All right, so we're moving on to item number 6. Ordinance amending the fiscal year 2025-26 budget to transfer, where are we starting? Budget to transfer available appropriations of $668,000 between departments within the CVS Oklahoma Settlement Subfund. This is to fund, looks like ART 2.
Jared Moore from Budget. There is nothing changing about the project, about the scope, about the funds. This is simply clerical for the Oklahoma Municipal Budget Act. We have to come before council because we're moving it from Department of City, well, now Planning and Neighborhoods, over to the fire department. The two departments discussed, and for managing invoices, the code staff, et cetera, they decided that fire was better suited to do the management part of the staff.
So we're just moving the money from one department to another?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions or comments, concerns? Okay. Item number 7, ordinance amending Tulsa revised ordinances, Title I, titled Airports and Aircraft in the entirety. Chapter 1, purpose definitions, a bunch of other, Chapter 2, adopting amendments to other chapters, find a schedule, providing for severability. We have to, good morning, sir.
Good morning. My name is Jeff Shaw. I'm the Director of Risk and Legal Services at the Tulsa Airport. Don't let the title fool you. I am not an attorney. But we've been working closely with the city legal department, Bill Walker. I provided Bill a memo summary of the changes. I hope you guys got a copy of that. If you didn't, I have copies of it here. It's attached to the ordinance. Basically, the ordinance, the last ordinance changes were made in 2012. Since that time, the world has changed several times. And so we wanted to make sure that the ordinance was consistent with FAA guidelines and changes that we've done at the airport that bring a little bit more consistency to the way we do things. And I'd be happy to go through the changes with you, but I don't want to step on Mr. Blair's toes either.
Please, whatever the council would prefer.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. If you could,
Sure.
if you want to provide some more clarity.
Yeah.
We have a working group, working group meeting.
So in the definitions, we changed the definition of airport and airport property to be consistent with what our lease says the airport is. It was a little bit different. And we just wanted to make sure that was proper. Also, just some background, there are, may seem obvious, but there are aeronautical activities and non-aeronautical activities at the airport. We wanted to make sure that, consistent with the regulations or with the ordinance, that we were clear. There were some times when we have some activity on the airfield that it wasn't clear if that was a regulation pointed to the airfield or off on the public side of the airport. The Airport Operations Division, we previously had that division defined as the law enforcement provision. That is not the case. We have an airport police department, that's the law enforcement division. They have a jurisdictional agreement with the city of Tulsa and a memorandum of understanding which defines the jurisdiction. And so the operations department doesn't do law enforcement at the airport. We've got a airport police service officer, which is a non-sworn position now, that helps our police department with a lot of really mainly customer service type things, but also, you know, they help get police officers where they need to be when they need to be there. We used to have a director of the airport, now we have a CEO. So we've changed globally the director to CEO. Let's see, what else? Disabled aircraft, we've changed that, we've added that definition. Disabled aircraft is often an issue with some of our tenants. They may have aircraft that are not in flying shape, and we want to make sure those are in the hangars and not sitting out in the middle of anywhere. We've added a definition for expressive activity, which is basically picketing and the distribution of flyers. We have a policy at the airport, and we allow expressive activity with a permit, and we have locations set up, predetermined for those kinds of things to happen. Landside agent, that's another area in the definitions we've added. Those are the people that help our police department manage the curb when we get really busy in the afternoon and early in the morning and the evening. We added the Tulsa International Airport Police Department to the definitions. They were not in there before. And so those are the definitions. In section 207, we used to have lost and found managed by the police department. That created some issues because the police department was putting lost and found in the evidence room. And then when people came to get it, they couldn't get it out because it was in the evidence room. So we've completely changed the way we handle lost and found. So that's a big change. We do that administratively instead of law enforcement wise. Let's see what else big important. So Chapter 3, Airport Operational Rules and Regulations, this is where we've changed some of the ordinances to separate between an airfield activity and a landside activity. And so we've made those changes. 302 talks about vehicle operations in public areas. We've added a few more, we've tightened up what can happen on our public parking facilities so that we've got more enforcement capabilities. There were some questions on some of it on every once in a while about enforcement of handicapped parking spaces, and we wanted to make sure that we had authority to do that. Let's see, we've clarified chapter 4 is the aviation fuel fee. The airport has always had the aviation fuel fee on 10% on every gallon dispensed, and we clarified the math on that so people would have a clearer understanding of how to do the math so they could pay properly. We, on the sign policy, we changed that. Actually, the city ordinance on the sign policy was codified in a different location, so we updated that citation and made a few other edits. The sign policy. Also, we wanted to make sure, in fitting with our neutral, viewpoint neutral, that we allowed people to display their flags, but they could only display, if there was an American flag, it has to be an official American flag, not a politically modified one. So we wanted to make sure that we'd keep the airport in a viewpoint neutral position. And that's about it.
Jack, did you have anything to add?
No.
All right. Counselors, any questions? Well, thank you very much for
Thank you.
coming today and presenting this
Yep.
to us. Thank you.
You bet.
And for
We are
the entire thing.
on to item 9, adjournment. Thank you, counselors.